Hello, my name is Fei Wang, and this is a pre-recorded presentation for the 2021 meeting of the Society for Mathematical Psychology. I'll present a project called Dynamics of Counterfactual Retrieval, which I conducted together with Ada Akanstudi Bhatia from the University of Pennsylvania. So to start with, I would like you to imagine that COVID has ended and everything's back to normal. You have signed up for sweepstake, and congratulations, you have won a free vacation trip in Costa Rica. Now, I would like you to think about other vacation destinations as you think about your trip in Costa Rica. So maybe you first thought about the Bahamas, then Cuba, and then Spain. And since you're thinking about alternative possibilities to your trip to Costa Rica, you're essentially engaging in what's called counterfactual thinking, which literally means thinking about what's contrary to the fact. The three examples here are the counterfactual items that came to mind as you consider your trip to Costa Rica. And of course, you could potentially think about any country in the world, but given cognitive limitations, our mind is able to retrieve only a subset of all the possible counterfactual items at a time. The question then is, what determines the counterfactual items that do come to our mind? Well, there has been previous studies on how counterfactual items are retrieved, and there are two main mechanisms. So, first, more desirable counterfactuals are more likely to come to mind. For example, the more that you like a country as a place for a vacation, the more likely that you will think about it counterfactually. Another possibility is that counterfactuals that are more similar to the target, that is, what is being counterfactualized, are more available in mind. In other words, items that are more similar to Costa Rica are more likely to come to mind. This is awesome, but these studies usually involve qualitative theories and the effects are examined in isolation. Instead, we want to build a formal quantitative model of counterfactual retrieval. Specifically, this model will allow us to jointly study the effects of a variety of mechanisms, including desirability and similarity, as well as other mechanisms that are potentially implicated in counterfactual retrieval. And we're going to study all of these things in a single model. Another advantage of the model is that it can create a theoretic connection with research on recall and semantic memory search, which are very important domains in psychology. And finally, if we have a model that tells us exactly how counterfactual items are retrieved, we can potentially use it to make out-of-sample predictions about the counterfactuals that will come to mind. Now, let me first explain the task we use to collect data for model fitting, and then I'll tell you more about the model itself and the results. In brief, we have a two-stage task. In session 1, participants were asked to evaluate a comprehensive list of items. Then a week later, in session 2, we randomly assigned participants to an experimental condition involving a target item. And again, by target item, I mean an item that will become sort of a basis of counterfactual retrieval, such as Costa Rica in our previous example. Then we asked participants to list canned counterfactuals that come to mind as they consider the target item. And finally, participants were asked to evaluate the target item. I don't have time to talk about why we collect this, but basically we want to see whether the desirability of the counterfactuals influence subsequent target evaluation. And we found that the more desirable the counterfactuals are, the less desirable the target is considered. And let me give you some more concrete examples. So in one of the experiments, we framed our task in terms of vacation travels. In session 1, participants were asked to evaluate how much they would like to go for vacation in each of the 193 countries in the world. An example you see here is about Costa Rica, but basically participants do this for all the countries in the world. Then a week later, in session 2, participants were shown a prompt in which they're asked to imagine they have won a free vacation trip in either Costa Rica, France, Japan, or South Africa. And these are the 4 target items that we used, and they come from distinct clusters in a 2-dimensional visualization of the word-to-vec space. And next, we asked participants to list 10 other countries that come to mind as they think about the trip in their assigned target location, which is Costa Rica in this example. And we asked them to list these counterfactual items in the order in which they come to mind. Okay, the examples that I gave you so far are about vacation travels, but to ensure that the effects observed are not unique to the scenario employed, we conducted 3 online studies using different contexts and word pools. In the first study, participants were asked to imagine that they have received a job offer in a foreign country. In the second study, they were asked to imagine winning a free vacation trip, as I previously described. And in the third study, they were asked to imagine being offered fruits and vegetables at a free tasting festival. Now, we have data from these 3 studies, and we want to see if, consistent with prior studies, people are more likely to retrieve desirable counterfactuals. And to do this, we first computed the retrieval probability of each item I in the word pool by dividing the total number of times this item is retrieved by the total number of participants. And then we correlated retrieval probabilities with participants' desirability ratings of all the items in the word pool, which, if you recall, came from their evaluations in session 1 of the task. And as you can see here, in all 3 studies, there is a very significant correlation, meaning that more desirable items are more likely to be listed as counterfactuals. So this is consistent with prior work. And then in addition to desirability, we found an effect of semantic similarity to the target. So recall that in each study, there are 4 conditions involving target items, which are selected from distinct clusters. So to see how similar the retrieved counterfactuals are with their corresponding target item, we conducted one-tailed pair t-test to compare the semantic similarity between retrieved counterfactuals and their corresponding target item against the average similarity between retrieved counterfactuals and the other 3 target items that were not used in the particular experimental condition. The results here suggest that overall participants are more likely to retrieve counterfactual items that are more semantically similar with their given target. Alright, now let's look at the model. What we want to do is to describe not just the item that come to mind, but also the sequence in which they come to mind. So not just if someone comes up with a certain item or not, but exactly the sequence of items that come to their mind. So for this purpose, we're going to use a Markov random walk on a semantic network. Let me break this down a little. Semantic networks are very well-known models of memory search, and random walks on semantic networks have been used to study things like free association and free recall. And this type of model essentially proposes that each item is a node that has a potentially asymmetric connection with each other item. And when an item is retrieved from memory, it activates other items that are connected to it, such that the items that have a stronger connection with this retrieved item also have a higher probability of being retrieved down the line. And the Markov model essentially says that an item that comes to mind depends only on the most recently retrieved item. So for instance, you can have a semantic network where each node is a country. And just to give you a very simple illustration, here a pair of items is connected by 2 arrows going in opposite directions. And the width of the arrows indicates the strength of connection. Sometimes a pair of items can have an asymmetric connection, meaning that one item has a stronger Q on another. And this is illustrated by a mismatch in the width of the arrows. In our model, we're going to allow for a number of different variables to influence node activation. Let's say we're predicting how much does the retrieval item A activates item B. Our model assumes that the activation of item B is given by a linear function of the following variables. The first variable that we're going to include is the desirability of item B. As we've discussed, it seems that the more desirable item B is, the more likely that it will get retrieved. The second variable we're going to include is the likelihood of occurrence of item B. So if item B is Spain, for example, the likelihood of occurrence means how likely is it that you will go for a vacation in Spain, which we've measured in session 1. But it's important to note that desirability and likelihood are very highly correlated, which could complicate statistical inferences. Another variable is, as we've mentioned, the semantic similarity between item B and the target item, which provides sort of a baseline activation in the network. We also include a semantic similarity to the previously recalled item. This is the semantic similarity between item A and item B. And this is a very well-established memory mechanism suggesting that the retrieval of an item activates other items that are semantically similar to it. And lastly, we have language frequency of item B. The language frequency is how commonly is a word mentioned in natural language, and is a very well-known memory cue as well. So essentially, our model says that the activation of item Spain given Cuba and a target item as a cue is given by a linear function like this. And finally, we fit our model using maximum likelihood estimation. And to see whether each variable is important in our model, in other words, whether each variable significantly influences counterfactual retrieval, we incrementally dropped each of the variables from the full model and conducted likelihood ratio tests between the full model and each of the reduced models. As you can see, in all these studies, we found that dropping desirability as a variable from the model significantly increased negative log likelihood, which means a significant worse fit of the model. So desirability is a very important variable to include in the model. Likelihood of occurrence was not significant, which is probably due to collinearity. And as expected, we found that semantic similarity to the target is a very important variable in the model. And we also found that semantic similarity to the previously retrieved item and language frequency also contribute significantly to the model. These two mechanisms are well established in memory research but have not been studied in counterfactual research. And by including them in our model, we not only show that they play a role in counterfactual retrieval, but we also show that the effects of desirability and similarity to the target remain significant even when controlling for these powerful memory mechanisms. In summary, we have a semantic network model which predicts the retrieval of counterfactual items given a target item. Our model incorporates the effects of various variables, with the most important ones being desirability, semantic similarity to the target, semantic similarity to the previously retrieved item, and language frequency. We provide a quantitative model of counterfactual retrieval based on memory models. By doing so, we integrate memory and decision-making research. And if you're interested in any paper that I mentioned, here are the references. And thank you so much for listening to my talk, and I'm extremely grateful to my mentors and co-authors, Ada and Sneep, for their incredible trust and support. Thank you.